Also, he has a really weird saying in there, which I totally disagreed with, but I thought it was funny that he thought it was important to talk about, which was he said, like, which is a saying, and I think it was the Navy or something, where they said, slow is efficient, efficient is fast, slow is fast. Butterscotch. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 126 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I'm doing all kinds of weird web things.
I'm Sam, and I'm waving my head around.
And this is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today is November 20 Cyber 2000 Cyber Teen. Because it's Cyber Monday today.
Cyber Month week.
Before we get started, we have a warning. Anything can happen on this show. There will be profanity, so if you're a child, get out of here. All right, first thing, news. We had TGB.
Yep.
Which is Thanksgiving break. That's TGT.
For some reason, I feel like if you find a good, punchy acronym to convert a period of time into, just makes it better.
Yeah.
You know? So we went with TGB, which just feels amazing to scream for some reason.
Or TGB, if you want to really like roll the emphasis around.
Yep.
So I think, first of all, why did we do this? Because what happens in a typical workplace environment is everybody says, my family's coming for Thanksgiving. And then the workplace says, that sucks. And then that's sort of the end of that exchange.
Usually, most places get either Wednesday off before or just the day of.
And then they'll have to go back on Friday.
Some places. Yeah. Crazy. So we were looking at it and we said, you know what, if we actually, because we're going to give off, originally we're going to go off Wednesday and Thursday, you know, like it's typical stuff because people want to be able to prepare for.
And we already don't have Friday.
Families, we already don't do Fridays. And so, but then we're looking at it, we said, you know, if we also do Monday and Tuesday, then everybody gets a 10-day break.
Yeah.
At the cost of only 2 days of studio time. So what if we just did that?
Give people the time they need to take vacations or go places or be with family.
And, you know, it seemed like the right time to do it because we've been doing it we've been sort of pedaling to the metal over here, and everyone had a great break. It seemed like it was a perfect amount of time. There's just a lot. Everyone did a lot of stuff, but also didn't lose their marbles. You know, which is nice.
I feel like one more day, there just marbles would have
been a mess.
Would have been everywhere.
A pile on the floor. But before TGB, we all actually put together sprint posts. So essentially saying, like we normally do during the week, here's what I'm going to try to do over this 10-day TGB, which for some reason, again, naming it makes it feel like it's a thing, like it's a particular chunk of time. It's like a New Year's resolution sort of thing. So
TGB.
I made a list of like 15 items I was going to try to do. And of course, I didn't get all of them done. But the whole point being, because I made the list, I got a lot of things done as opposed to
because you had a list to go look at instead of every day waking up and being like, what should I do today?
Yeah. So it was great. We worked on talks, I did some marketing work, and then also just played a heinous amount of video games.
Yeah.
It was great.
Heinous.
Heinous.
You better be careful. You're going to you're going to go to jail for that.
Yep.
I worked on doing some calculus work through Khan Academy as a nice refresher. I took calculus way back in the day. I need it. I need to know it now, and I don't know it. I don't remember it. Don't know how it works. Don't even know why it is what it is or how it do.
It has something to do with an apple hitting a man. That's all I have.
A man killed an apple creature
with his head,
with his face. Then something happened. I
believe he siphoned the knowledge out of it with his fangs.
I think he created some kind of prism and killed the animal with lasers. I think. I'm not quite up on the history of calculus.
There's a whole mythos, you know.
There's a whole thing around it. So I need to sort of relearn that whole lore.
Well, there was also a battle to the death between the two co-inventors of calculus because it
was actually history's first laser battle.
That's true.
So
prisms, lasers,
just all that
spectacular.
all that stuff.
Adam had an interesting view about the break, which is referring to it actually as a sabbatical, instead of a break, because we've talked about how when you take a weekend, you get weakened from the weekend.
Yes.
Right. So the
when
idea
you take
is
a break, you get broken.
You break.
So you do. But if you take a sabbatical, you get sabbated.
Yeah.
Yep. So we wanted to get sabbated, not broken, nor weakened. So all of a sudden, these list of things. But Adam, how was it for you overall?
It was spectacular. I spent a solid 30 hours, I think, over the week, just doing Udemy courses on front-end web development.
Just shoving that knowledge in.
Yeah, which has been my nemesis since the very beginning, mostly because it's all, a lot of it's there's a lot of tech there, but there's also a lot of design focus. And since I've been shoring up all of my back end knowledge and doing all the stuff I've been doing over the past year, but I still can only make really ugly stuff. And at some point that just becomes like, that's a serious hole that needs to get plugged.
Right.
Yeah. But all of my knowledge of front end web development is, based on stuff I just barely learned a long time ago. And so I know some jQuery, know some HTML and CSS, and I just kind of hack together simple websites. So I wanted to actually learn, the fancy front end frameworks that do all kinds of stuff for you that are really cool and magical. And so I just needed a solid window of time to do nothing but think about that. And so that's what I used my break for.
Beautiful.
It was spectacular.
Hell yeah, man.
Also, we ate a ridiculous amount of food.
We did.
Puppy chow, which for you non-Midwestern folk, I think the
Is that a
Chex-
Midwestern thing?
It's
I thought
largely
it was.
Midwestern.
I think Chex now has like a recipe on the box.
They call them Muddy Buddies.
Nutty Buddies.
What?
Yeah, because you can buy them. So there's Chex Mix, like the bags of Chex Mix, right? But they also have a Muddy Buddies bag.
It doesn't taste as good as homemade.
It's not as good because it's presumably mostly
Chex Mix is
corn there or
basically
something. Yeah,
yeah. So Chex Mix is what? It's chocolate, peanut butter,
butter,
Chex,
also butter.
You
Powdered sugar.
kind of turn that into a glob, and then you just like throw them in powdered sugar in a bag, and you shake the shit out of it.
Yep. And then you end up with this. So it's a Chex hex. I think they're hexagon. It's a Chex
Yeah,
hex.
that's the hex part of the Chex.
That
It's a C hex.
Yeah, it's a corn hex. So
Corn
it's
hex.
It's a Chex.
Wait,
Maybe that's what it is. Okay, so you take that and then basically what happens though is that they get magically converted because they're covered in delicious stuff. And then my favorite part about it is you have this huge bowl afterward of if you make it in the quantities that we do in the Midwest, which is only like 10 gallons at a time.
Yep.
That's the only way to make puppy chow.
yeah.
Or Muddy Buddies. And then the best part is if you pan it. So if you shake the pan of all the stuff, then like the huge ones that basically somehow masked, it's a huge sort of abomination of all these Chex glommed together, shake to the top.
Yeah,
And
you
then
can
take the
pan for
softball
fatties,
size-
for big fat Chex pieces.
You take this softball sized glob of chocolate, corn hexes, and powdered sugar, basically. Oh
Then
man!
you just bite into that thing like a big sugar apple.
Then you take a nap because
Then you take a nap because you have diabetes. And you got to sleep that off.
Take a nap for
So that was our Tajibi.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good. We also have a Cyber Monweek sale.
Yep.
Because it's not a Cyber Monday sale. It lasts for the whole week.
We know
It's kind of like the Black Friday sale, which is actually the Black Fry week.
it really
Yeah.
is now. It really is.
So we have our Cyber Monweek sale over at shop.bscotch.net where we got all of our merch. We also are on sale on iOS. Crashlands is 58% off. It's a very specific amount. So that's going pretty good. And so, yeah, if you
Will
want
that
to get in
still
on
be
those,
true when the podcast goes up?
yes, it's going through this like the second or something like that. So you got plenty of time.
Yeah,
but
we're
don't-
gearing up
don't
for
let
the
it
Don't waste it, though.
We're gearing up for the holiday season. So if you want to get merch, if you want it shipped in time for Christmas, which you probably do, or I guess just the end of the month, if that's your thing, then I think you need to place your order by the 18th. So dilly dally.
And the sooner the better, because we're not, as we've said, we're not Amazon.
Yeah,
There-
we
We're just
want
going to get your package when you get it.
There
We
is a
don't have
single
that
person
2-day.
named Monique who will package all your things.
Yeah.
So
She's actually going to bike it to you. And
Yeah.
that just takes some time.
It takes minutes.
Yeah.
And we here's the thing.
Very fast.
We want to get you merch, but you have to want to get it more because we're taking, as soon as the 19th comes, we're
gone.
we're taking a breather here.
that
right?
vacation that we just had was so good.
We're so tired from Thanksgiving break that we got to take a sort of winter break. So that's, get your orders in, especially right now during Cyber Mon Week.
Get some
So you
bundles you can save money on, I think.
Yeah. Otherwise, Sam and I spent a good portion of the break planning our talks for the Uruguay trip. We're going over to the Level UI conference.
Level Up UI, I think. Level Up Uruguay
Level Up Uruguay.
conference.
I don't know where the Y is.
The UI. UI is Uruguay's,
Uruguay's country abbreviation.
I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
So we're doing that. We're giving a talk on marketing, which has going to be pretty interesting. So we were discussing with the organizers of the conference, sort of because we just said, we'll talk about whatever. So just tell us what you need.
What do people care about?
What do people care about over there? And they basically said that that a lot of smaller developers have a lot of sort of confidence issues when it comes to self-publishing. And it's something that people tend to not really do a lot of. So we've done a lot of research for this talk about why self-publish and how to self-publish, because that's what we do. You know, we don't use a publisher. So that's coming together pretty good. And we've came up with some pretty alarming statistics, facts and figures about sort of the trends in the games industry, which are, you know, we know where it's going, which is that it's just ludicrously saturated. But the extent to which that is becoming the case is just more and more sort of, it's reached a point beyond sort of being alarming and more into sort of like the absurd. Yeah. So I think it was looking at the Steam Spy data. So every July they put out an update on over the previous year, how many, like what's the median number of owners for any given game on Steam based on launch month. And by the time you get into, so in 2011, the median owners per game on Steam was 220 something thousand. Now it's 4,000.
Yep.
So, you know, there's
success is not guaranteed.
But again, this is simply because so many games are coming out, most of which don't do anything. And of course, so the average sales on Steam are something closer to 50,000. But the median is 4,000, which basically tells you that most games do nothing. And then a handful of games do really, really, really well.
Yep.
Which has kind of always been the case, but there's just more room. There's more room at the bottom now.
Well, it's always been the case, except that the games that didn't do well weren't even in the market.
Right. They just never ended up on Steam.
Right. So really the market is exactly the same as it always has been.
There's just a lot
except
more
all the stuff that also doesn't sell anything is now visible in that market to some extent.
Yeah. So that's
because this is what I saw last year when I did that analysis to look at.
Well, we actually reread it to put together some of this talk.
Yeah. So, and that was what I saw that time, is that if you look at the top of the graph over time,
it's basically
those games that are up there that are performing really well, there's kind of the same number of stuff selling the same number of copies up there.
Yeah. So if you're like, what are the sales figures for the top, 10 or top 20 games on Steam?
Right.
And it's just the same.
Comes out the same.
Comes out the same every time.
Yep. There's just more and more stuff kind of filling out those lower layers.
Right. Yeah.
Actually, I think you should revisit that article, because there's some pieces you said where you're like, I can't tell this until I need to do another analysis.
Yep.
You should read through it. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been working on that, and we're leaving next week. It's 18 hours of flying, I think.
I got books. I think I only have enough books to get there, because it's an 18-hour trip. I'm going to easily read like 3 books.
Yeah. The thing I need to figure out mostly is what to do about my ass. Because
is that what we all need to figure out?
Because every time I've flown to India,
is your ass go to sleep?
By the time I get like 5 hours in, my tailbone just fucking hurts from sitting just on these like really uncomfortable airplanes.
You should get a neck pillow
and then use it
as a butt pillow.
Yeah, because what you need is you need kind of like a bicycle seat where like it pads your butt cheeks, but then it leaves room for your tailbone. You know, I think it's kind of stupid that we have a tailbone to begin with, but
we don't have tails anymore, so probably
we just have a bone for where it used to be.
We just use a neck pillow and then flip it, so it's like a toilet seat basically, but inverted. So the hole's in the back where your tailbone is. There you go.
I'm going to do that.
That solves all your problems.
Or you get 2 sort of skinny pillows, but one under each leg.
Yeah.
Kind of elevate yourself.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my number one concern right now is
blood clots.
So I'm going to see if I'm going to work ass preservation, blood clots. You got to stand up and stretch.
Also, it's a United flight, so you might get
assaulted.
That does actually help with the blood clots, though. Like when they kind of beat the shit out of you,
gets
it loosens up the blood. Kind of gets like
blunt force trauma.
When you go to the hospital, they put those leg massagers on there, and on a United flight, the attendants just come by and punch you in the leg, sort of every now and then.
So you also have to go through U.S. Customs on the way back, which is
then you get punched there as well.
Nightmare hellscape.
Yep, they will. I remember one time I flew for 30 hours coming from India. And I landed in Chicago, and I got to Chicago, and you have to go through customs, and you go back through security. When I went back through security, they swiped my hands with one of those stupid chemical pads, and they're like, "There's gunpowder on your hands." I'm like, "You guys." I've already been flying for 30 hours. Like, if I was gonna do something, you missed the moment like a long time ago here.
But also, where would it have come from?
Yeah, which kind
I
of
didn't have it on me before.
Somehow I land in Chicago. Now I have gunpowder on me. Like, maybe,
I mean, there is a lot of gunfire in Chicago, so maybe
it's just kind of in the United States.
That's
It's just kind of a gunpowder sort of cloud.
Yeah.
It's just kind
sure
of
seems like it.
All right. So then one final thing to talk about in the news before we get on to questions is loot boxes.
So you know what? We told you guys this was coming.
We called this shit
Gray Rhino. We talked about
over the summer. We talked about Rocket League and their loot boxes and how we were kind of bummed about it.
Overwatch. I think talk about that one.
Overwatch, and then probably 4 or 5 episodes ago, maybe more than that, we talked about the concept of a gray rhino, which is an oncoming event that everybody should see coming, but nobody seems to do anything about it or get out of the way. And we talked about potential gray rhinos in the games industry, and loot boxes was kind of the thing at the top of our mind as something that is probably going to cause some problems that people don't really, for some reason, want to foresee, probably because there's a lot of money involved. So just over the past week, 2 weeks, the conversation about loot boxes has taken a hilarious turn. It's first starting with Star Wars Battlefront 2, which is published by Electronic Arts. So what happened with Star Wars Battlefront 2 is it's a $60 premium game, and EA just crammed it full of loot boxes for things that were required to progress through the game and to unlock new capabilities. So like all the different heroes that you were going to play as and equipment and stuff like that. You could either grind for hours and hours and hours.
Well, I think it's not even just hours and hours. Wasn't it 4,000 hours?
Somebody did the math and it came out to you'd have to work full time, 40 hours a week for a year and a half to unlock all the stuff in the game.
Beautiful.
Or you could spend $2,100 on loot boxes.
Actually, do they sell loot boxes or do they sell? Because this might be a separate problem.
No, they sold loot boxes.
It was loot boxes.
The stuff that you got, you couldn't ever get the thing you wanted. It was through these loot boxes. And for those who are unfamiliar, loot boxes it's like a little, like a chest or a crate or something.
The best way to think about it is the physical version of
it's
this
a slot machine.
It's a slot machine, but the physical version is also like getting card packs, right? If you go to get a Pokemon card pack, you don't know what's in it. You don't buy a particular card. You buy this pack, and there's this experience of unwrapping it and getting stuff. The difference with a loot box, of course, is it's a digital good, and in the case of these, like the progression of a game that already is a $60 game being bound to this loot box system gets kind of weird.
Yeah, it violates people's expectations because they assume that if they've paid for the game, now they have the game, and now they can achieve things in the game and progress through the game through playing it, right? Because that's reasonable. And so Electronic Arts came into Reddit to try to, one of their community relations team members came into Reddit to try to tamp down this problem, and they simply made sort of a very sort of cut and paste PR statement about how everything in the game is optimized to sort of maximize the amount of pride and sense of accomplishment that players feel. And which of course was a total cop out because that is absolutely not what a paid random loot box does. You don't feel proud for getting a random, Darth Vader unlock or something for paying $5. And so that comment quickly became literally the most downvoted comment in the history of Reddit. Last I checked, it was over 700,000 downvotes.
That's pretty impressive.
So this turned into a huge PR nightmare for EA.
Got big enough that it actually hit the mainstream media.
And
this is where the problem actually finally begins for EA.
So Star Wars is owned by Disney. And it's not owned by EA. And Disney has a philosophy. I think there was a GamesIndustry.biz article, definitely worth reading, about how Disney approaches their intellectual property. And basically Disney's stance is the preservation of the value of the IP is absolutely paramount. And anything that will damage people's perception of the IP needs to be dealt with immediately. Even at
short-term costs.
Even if it's profitable. And so the CEO of Disney called the CEO of EA, and they had some words, and then and now EA is changing that entire model. They're turning off the microtransactions. However, their announcement was that they will be turning those microtransactions back on at a later date once they have rebalanced things. So this is not the end of it, but there was just this overwhelming sort of tsunami of community backlash that just crushed EA under this. So that happened. And then just over the weekend, I think on Friday, some news came out about Destiny 2.
So we also sell, well, they're called bright engrams, but there's loot. It's great.
So the way progression works in Destiny 2 is you level up. It's a shooter MMO kind of a thing. You level up to the max level, which is level 20. And then from there, your experience bar stays, but now experience doesn't give you levels. It gives you loot boxes. So you get the XP bar to the end. You get a bright engram, which is a loot box. So it's basically you just pull a slot machine, lever, and you get some new thing for your character.
Again, if it's just in the context of the game, that's fine.
It's fine. But
the
of course,
problem is you can buy them.
Of course, they sell bright engrams. I believe they are cosmetic items. So this does sort of, it takes a less sinister tone, unlike the.
I think there's weapons in there.
There might be, but I'm pretty sure that it's cosmetic. But so that's not bad in and of itself. The kicker is that Activision was suppressing the truth about how much experience people were getting, where the longer somebody spent trying to get experience points to unlock these things, the more they would suppress how much experience they got. And so essentially what they were doing is they were singling out the players who wanted these things the most and making it harder for them to get them through normal gameplay, which would then
invisibly.
Yep. But invisibly. So they would actually.
Well, in fact, it wasn't even invisibly. I think they
lied.
It was supposed.
Like it was. Yeah. So the game would say you just got 5,000 experience for defeating that thing, but really it would give you like 100 or something. So
it would just take longer and longer to do everything.
Yeah. Right. So the more energy you put into unlocking these things, the more the game would suppress your progress, while telling you that your progress was not being suppressed. So this, of course, exploded. As one might expect, because the intention there is, again, it's just like EA's sort of cop-out response of, well, this is to give players a sense of pride and accomplishment, Nope, this is just another thing to quietly single out the players who really want a thing and try to find ways to
get them to pay for it,
extract cash from them.
Yep.
So this happened. There was a big sort of PR post by Activision about by Bungie actually going in and saying, yep, we've reviewed the data and we see that, this system isn't doing what we had hoped it would do. And so we're going to update this system. Anyways, all this is to say this shit is getting out of control, and it's now reached a point where, it's kind of the lines between sort of like online slot machine and video game are getting blurred, so much so that, I know the state of Hawaii had a big referendum.
Yeah, well, basically was it a senator or who was it?
It was a state rep in Hawaii.
Yeah, who basically came out and said, "This is insane." He goes, "This is a Star Wars themed casino." That's what he called it.
Yeah, and he said, we came together against the tobacco industry to say you're not going to use Joe Camel to convince our kids to smoke, and we should also not allow companies to use Star Wars to convince our kids to gamble.
Yeah,
it's just like
ooh, damn. That's hidden somewhere. And then across the pond in Belgium, they're doing an investigation about the whole thing and apparently planning to take something to the EU about potential regulations for this stuff. The UK gambling body, I believe, found it to be not technically gambling because it doesn't do one of the things that is required by their laws before they can intervene, which is essentially being able to pull the converted currency back out into real world money. But they did basically said like, this is real blurry.
Really blurring the lines here.
Get real weird.
Yeah. Because it is the case that it is definitely in violation of the terms of use for these games, but it is something that players do, which is to resell their accounts for those games to other players. So you can, spend money on these loot boxes, get items for your character, and then sell that account to somebody else. So, I mean, it isn't the case that these things don't have a real world monetary value.
But if it's against the terms of use, that's not, and there's not a mechanism provided for that, I don't think there's any argument there at all that that's what's happening.
But yeah, so again, this is coming. This is coming. It's arrived in some forms already. So I'm really curious to see kind of what happens to the regulatory landscape over this. And when someone's just going to say like that state rep did, that, yeah, this is just straight up gambling. You guys are just, it's all you're doing.
Well, I think just like how the term, microtransaction sort of became a dirty word for quite a while, now loot box is reaching that same point where as soon as somebody says that a game has loot boxes in it,
right.
How many people is that going to turn off from playing that game? And so that's actually something that has kept me from wanting from buying Overwatch. It's something that's kind of pushed me away from Rocket League, where before they had loot boxes, I was really into the game. And then all of a sudden I keep getting these like boxes that I need to now spend dollars to buy keys to open and get random rewards, And
you're like, can I just buy what I want?
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't like the game just dangling. Yeah. Cause like their original model was they would
show you things and you buy
They'd show you things. You'd be like, I want that thing. And you spend $1 on it. I was totally happy to do that, but now I don't get to make that decision. Now I have to gamble. Like the game, if I want to get a new thing, I have to gamble, which I don't like. So, I mean, I know personally this has pushed me away from either purchasing games or playing games that I already owned. And I have to wonder how much that's, doing the same for a lot of other people.
Well, but the problem here is that it's such an effective way to pull money out of people.
Specific people.
Yeah. But enough of them and enough money.
Yeah.
And the games themselves are now completely designed around doing that.
Oh, it's good. It's
so that it doesn't actually matter if your population of players decreases, even if you halved your population of players as a consequence.
If you're making 10 times more money from the rest.
Yeah, on average, right? Then you're still going to do just financially way, way better. And unfortunately, that's where all the incentives are. Yeah. So I think we're stuck with this until
there's a regulation comes in. Yeah.
Yep. God dang. So this gray rhino is continuing to barrel toward the games industry. Soon. And everybody's going to try to make as much money as they can and not
it's
bother.
Given all of us it's kind of like back in the 90s when everyone was all up in arms about violence in video games. And it gave all the video games a bad name.
Yeah.
For a long time, actually.
So now video games are gambling.
Thanks, EA.
Now they're violent gambling.
Yeah. Which, of course, people are less concerned about because there's a lot of money involved.
And as long as there's not a nipple.
Yeah.
As long as no.
Yeah.
The violence is fine.
Violence and gambling. Perfect.
Yeah. Keep those nipples out of there. So that's happening. We'll see what happens.
Gray Rhino watch. That's what we'll be doing.
Yeah. So then there's a question of is there something that you can do as a savvy person to sort of take advantage of these companies not getting out of the way? So you could try to short EA stock, which I would not recommend doing, because if
you should literally never short a stock.
You should never short a stock, because if you short a stock,
that's the best way to go bankrupt.
Yeah, your best case scenario is that you double your money, and your worst case scenario is that you owe infinite money. Because there's no limit to how high a stock can go, but there is a limit to how low it can go. Anyways, a little investor tip for you. All right.
Yeah, don't
short things.
Yep.
All right. Unless you have insider trading information, in which case that's illegal and you're going to jail. All right.
Well, you're not going to go to jail.
No,
let's be real.
You'll be fine.
As long as you do it big enough, you definitely won't go to jail. Martha Stewart, though,
she went to jail.
It does happen.
Of all people.
Of all people. Anyways, all right, let's get out of some questions. These questions come from our listeners over at podcast.bsketch.net. So if you'd like to get your questions on a future episode, head on over there and ask away. First question comes from Retro Banana Man NL. NaNoWriMo is over. How did it go for you? I tried, but life happened. Thesis stuff. So I only reached 5K words. Sad face.
How'd it go for you guys? I didn't do it. So
I got caught up up to the halfway point, which was then when a few days of intense work, and then Thanksgiving break started.
Yeah.
So for Thanksgiving break, I had two choices. So one was finish my NaNoWriMo project, and the other one was
learn stuff.
And so I decided for that break that I wanted to, mostly because I wanted to be able to apply front-end web dev stuff to my work the moment I got back. And so I needed that week to just be able to dive into a thing and learn it. Otherwise, I literally wouldn't be able to do the job that I needed to do for who knows how long.
Slightly more
months, right? So I decided that was more important at the time. And then that's what so I wrote 25,000 words for my NaNoWriMo. Then Thanksgiving break started, and
you made a choice.
I made a choice and did 30 hours of Udemy courses instead. And I still am going to finish my NaNoWriMo project, though.
It's a programming book, isn't it?
It's a book about computer stuff.
How computers work.
Yeah.
For the layperson.
Yeah. But for like the smart layperson who just actually wants to know. Not the computers for dummies style where it's just like, give me the bare minimum I can scrape by with, So
whenever I think of a layperson, I think of a person laying on the ground being like, I don't get it. It's hard.
Yeah. It's not far from the truth, I don't think.
Well, how'd yours go, Seth? What's your situation?
I got up to 31,000 words, and then I reached a similar crossroads, I think, where...
Also, your technique was completely different, because you would just...
I just did it in like 8,000 word bursts. Yeah, so I think there were a couple questions I wanted to answer with National Novel Writing Month, which is this hard? And also, do I enjoy this? And the answer was basically no in both. I enjoyed kind of the early stages of writing, but because I don't actually have aims to publish a book, I don't have aims to be a novelist. I learned a lot from it. But I think the act of just like being in the chair, typing for 8 hours at a stretch, was, I don't know. Like I have other things that I could be doing that I actually do move my life forward in meaningful and big ways, that are more aligned with my goals. And so I decided after 31,000 words, I was like, okay, I've demonstrated that I'm capable of doing this, of writing just tens of thousands of words. And so I just was like, all right, I'm good. I did it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's mostly you have to do it for a reason.
Yeah.
Right. And so once the
reason is passed.
Yeah. Once the reason is passed. And for me, it was that the reason I was doing is because I hadn't in a long time and I hadn't actually just sat down and written for a long time. So I wanted to make sure I did that and kind of brushed up on the skills a bit. And I've also wanted to put a book like this together that I started writing. And I hadn't had something that was sort of like an impetus to do it. Because for me, there just always is stuff I'd rather be spending my time doing. Usually learning new stuff that could go into the book, right? But just learning stuff. And so NaNoWriMo is a nice thing because it's this large community doing it. It sort of serves as the impetus by itself because it's just an event, And so for me, it was just I wanted to use that as the sort of driving thing to force myself to get started on the thing. Even though there was stuff that I'd rather be doing instead. So I use it as a mechanism to switch my priorities temporarily. Yeah. But it definitely was the case that as soon as I truly had time and like lots of it to do something, then it didn't seem like a good use of it.
Yeah.
But that's only for me. That's because of where my priorities are right now, which are not.
Some people get really hung up about quitting stuff,
Yeah.
You just got to know what your values are.
Well, I think the thing that makes quitting things hard or like feel weird is if you didn't actually know ahead of time what you were trying to do. Because if you haven't managed to do that yet, then you should probably keep going. But if it's the case that you did, then what are you doing?
Answer the questions you wanted to answer or accomplish things you want to accomplish. Because to me, I mean, 50,000 words it's arbitrary.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And actually, if you read the book No Plot, No Problem, which is by the creator of National Novel Writing Month, he's like, 50,000 words. We all just thought it seemed like a pretty good number. There's actually no rationale behind it.
It's a good number.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Seems like a lot.
Yeah. So for me, like I'd always had ideas about what it would be like to write and to be a writer. And this gave me an opportunity to do that experiment and kind of see what it was like. And it turns out I get a lot more joy out of programming and reading.
Cool.
So, yep. So that was it. Next question comes from
my wife. Crushed it though. I just wanted to say.
Yeah, that's true.
She was finished last week.
Dang,
she's still going because she's writing a novel for realsies though. So so that was basically NaNoWriMo was just like what she was already doing. Now she just counted the words for NaNoWriMo during that time.
Right. So yeah, she moved pretty fast.
Yep,
I have to say.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. So next question comes from Sly Fox Glove. Seth, how did you decide you wanted to program the games instead of any of the other fields? Right now, I'm going to start a one-man operation. Any beginner tips? So I guess maybe the question is like instead of the other fields, meaning instead of doing art or
probably
some other aspect.
Everything else related.
Yeah. So I also started as a one-person operation. So I didn't decide I wanted to program the games. I just decided I wanted to make games, and programming was one of the things that I had to do. So it just turned out that after doing that for about a year and a half, then when Sam and I started working on Butterscotch stuff, then I had moved pretty far ahead on the programming side. to the point where I could just do most things pretty well. And so I just kind of defaulted into that role. So at no point was that I decide I wanted to be a games programmer. I just wanted to make games, and that just happened to be something that I could do.
Yeah, well, all of us basically had the same thing happen, where it was more a question of what is necessary currently.
I will do what is necessary.
Do what is needed. So Adam now does web programming, but when he came on,
because
we were
of a burning passion for the internet.
Yeah. When he came on, we were like, we don't know what to do with you. And so he hung out for a month or so, worked on some little projects and things. He worked on shaders for a few weeks.
Well, because my background was in image analysis. So it was like shaders, that's just image stuff. So
turns out we don't need very many of them.
Nope.
So, that dried up.
But we got
2 weeks.
two
we got some water. We got some hologram shaders. And then
we were like, wait, these don't work on mobile. What are we even doing?
Yeah. And then Adam was like, I guess I could bang out web stuff.
So he just went into a cave with a box of scraps and made Butterscotch ID. Tony Stark style.
Yeah. I mean, basically all of it's the same story, which is, hey, we need a thing, and there's only one of us, or two of us, or three of us. So
yeah, I think coincidentally, I was the only one who came into it with some pre-existing skill that applied directly to the thing that I was doing.
Correct. So
that just became the natural thing that I did. And then, Adam and Sam just learned stuff.
Had no skills.
From the ground up. So beginner tips, just make everything. Just do everything you can.
Yeah.
It's also the case that if you start as a one-person operation, if you are able to actually do things that are good because you practice a shitload, then it becomes very easy to become a two-person operation because you inspire confidence in other people at your capacity to execute.
Yes.
So if you just decide, I want to make a video game, and you just, call your best friend or something, and you have no skill and no capacity to actually do any of the things that you want to do.
And then you say, I'm going to be the programmer.
Yeah.
You can be the other thing.
That's a pretty tough sell. Yeah. So
because at least one person on our team needs to be able to do something.
At least one person should be able to do something.
That's how we got started.
Yeah. That's all you need.
Yep.
So you're good. All right. Next question comes from Dageki. What systems do you use to help prioritize your work day and your life? What do those systems look like?
I like the old idea of eating the frog, which is you decide what the most important thing is that you could get done that day.
And then you eat a frog.
Do it in the morning.
And you eat a frog.
Well, the idea is that usually that's like a heavy thing. It's not going to be like, oh yeah, make this call or talk to this person.
Having trouble seeing the metaphorical connection.
I don't know.
I think it's probably because you don't want to eat a frog.
Yeah, but you need to eat the
frog.
But
for some reason,
frog
you need
legs
to.
are delicious.
But you don't need to eat the whole frog.
Disgusting.
That's fair.
You get that tongue? Oh, it's disgusting. But yeah, I think I'm not sure why people were eating frogs. It's an old adage. So who knows what the circumstances were.
Old-timey people said a lot of weird shit.
They do say a lot of weird
stuff.
It
might have just gotten lost in translation too, over the years. Sort of this game of telephone problem.
Yep. Yeah. So, but anyways, eating the frog is the idea of when you're making a list for the day, if you just say, okay, what would be, I usually do ask myself the question, what would be if I did these three things? What three things if I did today would make it so that this day and then like the setup for tomorrow was really good. And I find that framing to be really helpful because then you say, okay, yeah, so today I should really actually just focus on this, which means I should not be paying attention to my emails or any of that shit until like 2 p.m. Until this is done. Just wait till this is done. And then it also helps you set up for the future. So that's one of my favorite ways to do it. And the other one is just to actually, I in particular, because of my role on the team, tend to have a lot more conversations about like what I should be doing at any given point in time because I'm a little bit more slippery.
Like an eel,
like a kind of frog, or a frog. So I can basically fill a lot of different
So
rules.
sometimes would you say you have to eat yourself?
Sometimes that first frog to eat is to say I'm gonna have a talk.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do is to have clearly laid out goals for specific domains. So it's easy to just be like, I should save more money. Like you could say that. Everybody should do that. Everybody says that. But where and why and how should you invest it? Should you save it? Whatever. But if you say, I need to save X dollars by the time I'm 40, then now all of a sudden you have an idea of how many dollars a day you need to be setting aside, whether you should be investing it, all those things. And so when it comes to sort of calibrating what your activities are on a day-to-day basis, knowing where you're actually trying to go really helps with that. So the same thing goes with health. A lot of people say, I'm going to exercise more. Well, that's a good thing, but if you don't have an actual destination, then it makes it harder because technically any amount of exercise you do is more. Right. and now you've done it already. But if you say like, I want to run a 6-minute mile.
Or you can even
then
say, I
you
want to
gotta
go to
think
the
of
gym
what-
4 times this week.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Get a thing that you can actually measure.
Yeah.
As
Goals.
opposed-
Yeah. Goals should always be measurable. But I think the problem that a lot of people have is they try not to structure their lives. They try to, they kind of, like we often talk about the work-life balance thing, and people tend to view their work as work and their life as something else. And we tend to view everything as work. It's just something that you do.
Everything is the same thing.
Everything is the same thing. And if you want to really go places in your life, then I think having an actual plan on where the fuck you're going,
Helps.
really helps you go there. So, yeah. Make goals.
What was the prompt again?
What systems do you use
Systems.
to help prioritize your work day
Right.
in life?
I guess, I mean, most of my days are just make as much progress as I can towards something that I'm working on. So if we take like Butterscotch ID stuff or something, right? I have a very long-term goal for that. And I know exactly what all those endpoints are. I know what I need to achieve with that thing. What I'm going to get done today, I have no fucking clue, right? Because I don't know how long anything
But you
is gonna
do
take.
have a target. Like you do have a
Yeah, I've
long-term
got a target.
goal.
Yeah.
that
But when
you-
it comes to prioritizing the day,
yeah.
for me, it's usually clear out all the little stuff.
Eat the frogs.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I eat the little frogs.
You
I
eat the
guess. I think
the
this is
cricket
different
frogs.
than what
These are
Sam
different
was
kinds of
talking about.
frogs.
Oh.
Because Sam's is confusingly metaphorical somehow.
So you're basically eating sort of like crickets.
Yeah.
And sort of
just like
small
mealworms,
Mealworms.
yeah, ants, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you scoop up all the little guys and you eat those first thing. Clear out any meetings. Do all the other stuff that could occupy mind space, and then just fucking buckle up and work. on
Buckle
things.
up.
Yep. And
Buckle your pants.
build that mental model and just work on stuff. Because for me, it's mostly getting that mental model built of the project that I'm working on, and then just attacking that thing and trying to get it done. And taking that in conjunction with the good enough principle.
The
is
good
then
enough
just how
principle.
I do stuff.
Man.
Because then I'm always just making as much progress as is possible.
So there was a great metaphor, speaking of excellent metaphors, that I was reading last night, which I think we may have talked about this a long time ago, but it's basically the idea of if you think about your time as like a bucket and about the tasks that you need to do as sort of different sizes of like rocks, and you're going to fill this bucket. So if you had a whole bunch of sand, meaning like representing all the little things that you need to take care of, that don't matter that much, but that they just kind of like always there. And then you've got a bunch of like big rocks, which are the things that really matter to you that are definitely going to take a lot of time, but they're really important. If you put the sand in first, then it creates a new floor, right?
Yep.
And you actually can't fit all the big rocks in, right? So you have to give up a bunch of those things. If you put the big rocks in first, then you put the sand in afterwards, then it fills
the spot.
It fills the empty spaces.
Right.
So in other words, it's a metaphor meaning try to allocate your time toward the things that matter to you the most first. And then,
Yeah, which is literally the opposite of what I do.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
And for there, it's because you can't realistically just pour sand on top of a bunch of pebbles because it doesn't work its way through all the cracks unless you shake the fuck out of it.
well, yeah, you got to shake that
it.
bucket.
So somehow you got to shake your life up. If that's the strategy, but I would prefer the strategy where you just get rid of the sand, because I'm not putting the sand in the bucket.
But here's the
I'm
thing.
bailing it out.
The sand comes back every day.
It does, yeah. But you also put strategies in place using the can we not.
So what you
principle
do is you be like,
to
okay,
minimize the amount of sand that come in, so that only the sand that must be taken care of actually.
So you ask the question, do I need to
well,
be?
yeah. So your bucket is here
sand?
on this table, right? And every day, some asshole comes and just like plops some sand in
Like,
the
you're going to
same
need to put that in
the
there.
same place on the table, and then the next day they come to drop that sand on there, and they find that you've cut a hole in the table.
Yeah,
and
which is so that's how I handle email, for example, using unsubscribes.
you just delete everything.
I unsubscribe so hard from emails that now out of habit, even if I'm just reading another email, I actually still scroll and look for an unsubscribe link at the bottom.
Even if it's from a dear friend.
Yeah, even just for me. Because I also,
It's like, hey, Adam, how's it going? You're like, oh,
it's just a
unsubscribe.
habit.
Just reply in all caps.
Somebody calls you.
Please take me
just
off your
a
list.
habit.
Adam, I haven't talked to you in years. Unsubscribe.
Yeah, and if a title of an email looks even vaguely like a solicitation for a service or something, then I delete it immediately. And if I see it again, I'd mark it as spam.
Yep.
My inbox is so fucking clean.
Because you can
crazy.
choose not to do most things, which is embodied in our Can We Not mugs over at shop.bscotch.net. Now on sale for Cyber Mud Week.
In a bundle.
No, it isn't. It is in a bundle.
Aren't the bundles on sale?
Yeah, the bundles are on sale.
But the one by itself is not on sale.
Yeah, well, obviously you would buy a bundle. I mean, the savings are unreal. All right. Next question comes from M-Cade or I'm Cade?
I
am Cade.
It's like I am legend, but he's a Cade, whatever that is.
He's
a type of insect, I think.
I think it's an arcade cabinet, but with the R taken off.
It's just a Cade. Cade cabinet.
So instead of like arcade as a question, it's I am
is
Cade.
Cade.
Yeah.
I am Cade.
This is the answer to the question.
Arcade? I am Cade. I am Cade. I am Cade says
this is a Groot situation.
What are your thoughts on pre-order and beta testing rewards? Example, paid for a game in beta. I was promised sweet loot for being a founder. But the week of launch, you could order the game and the same stuff I got for being a founder. What are your thoughts?
So this is actually really weird and complicated because so part of it is to think about it not just from, so if you think about it from a business standpoint, there's some angles that come that are very obvious. And you think about it actually from an overall sort of delivery of an experience standpoint, there's other ones that I think are less obvious. So for us, part of the reasons why whenever we talk about the ability, for example, to do like a beta buy-in thing, like you actually just buy the game, but you're buying it and getting access to the beta. Part of it is that as people who have played a lot of games and have been very excited about some games, being able to deliver that experience to someone where it's like you get to get in early is super cool, right? Very exciting. But when it comes to actually the business side of things, we've actually only sort of been bitten by it because we did pre-orders with the Crashlands, but they were full price because I think they were full price, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So we just put up a pre-order
on Steam only,
and you got it through Humble. And that was a very easy way for us to, I mean, we didn't need to do it. I think we did it because we were like, this seems like a good thing.
People do pre-orders, right? Let's do pre-orders.
And the thing to understand is like, we made maybe a couple $1,000s off it.
Not even.
I
think about $1,000.
Maybe $1,000 total. Yeah. And this is when the company had no money. So of course that was a huge spike in revenue.
It was like a quintupling of our monthly revenue.
but overall, it didn't actually matter much. And what it actually did is put us in this weird bind, exactly what you're talking about, which is we ended up when we went into the launch window, that was where a lot of people at that point in time were doing say like a 10% discount or 50%
like a launch
discount.
Day sale.
Yeah, just to get people really excited about getting in on the ground floor. And we actually realized that we couldn't quite do that. We didn't feel good about doing that because that sort of the founders, the people who got in really early and didn't get anything.
They paid full price.
We would be sort of like kind of slapping them in the face a little bit by giving.
Had you not pre-ordered, you would have gotten a discount.
Up. Yeah. So it's one of those things actually as a dev that's really hard to, because it's just impossible to foresee the situation that you're going to launch in and also kind of what the context of that is. It's basically impossible to not like potentially cause some strife,
some backlash
with something that you were trying to actually make it interesting.
But if you think about it from the other side too, if you were a person who wasn't involved with beta testing or whatever, all these beta testers got some extra sweet loot, right? And then you hadn't even heard of the game,
right?
Like comes out, you see it pop up on Steam.
In other words,
oh my God, this looks like exactly the kind of thing
you were an innocent bystander.
You're an innocent bystander.
Right.
So now you go buy the game, you get into it, you're playing, having a fucking great time. Then you're like, ooh, I'm not sure how this thing works. So then you go look in the forums, and you join some community, and you're just fucking pumped about this game. And then you see a screenshot of somebody showing off some cool armor set.
Dope ass hoverboard.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, that's awesome. Like, what do I need to do in the game to get that? And they're just like, oh, you can't.
You can't.
Like, it's
that
in the game.
Sucks,
yeah, it's in there because I can play it. My game copy is the same as your game copy. The thing is there. You just don't get to have this.
Right.
Forever now.
Yeah. And now couple that with the fact that except in very, very rare, weird circumstances, the vast, vast majority of all the people playing a game are people who did not beta test it and did not pre-order it, which means that you've basically just decided to give this very limited pool of people access to content that you're just not letting the majority of your players have.
Even if they would enjoy
through no fault of their own. They didn't know. Maybe they didn't have the cash on hand to pre-order at the time.
And most people wouldn't even have known because people don't pay that much attention to stuff.
Right.
So there will
especially
be people,
games that haven't launched yet.
Right. So my personal position on this is that that using these things is basically just bribery to try to convince somebody to do something that they don't want to do. Because if you're saying,
I don't think it ever does that though.
But if you're saying
You know?
pre-order, you get this pre-order bonus,
Right.
It's this exclusive content that you won't get.
Right.
If you buy this
because I
later.
think importantly, what's the point of pre-ordering?
There is no point.
Right.
There's no reason to
Well, no,
pre-order.
but that's where I disagree, because I think part of the excitement of like being wrapped up in sort of, you know, the pre-launch process for a game is actually just being really, really excited and being able to declare like, I'm really fucking pumped about Fallout 4 or whatever else. I'm going to pre-order it. You know, like
Sure.
I think it's actually
and that's fine.
From
You
a user
shouldn't get
experience standpoint.
you shouldn't get rewarded in addition. If the idea is that this is already a reward
Right.
for being excited about the thing as a consumer of it, then you don't need to add this other stuff on top.
I agree. And that's I think where we kind of landed on it, which was we won't be offering like, you know, variable rewards of any sort, actual content rewards of any sort for any pre-order stuff in the future, just because it starts putting us in this weird, just really weird place. And as far as even just offering pre-orders, it's just sort of that question of, you know, if we're at a point where we think we actually sort of know what our plan is and what our launch plan is going to be, which was part of the problem with Crashlands at that time, then we can more constructively kind of figure out a mechanism to do that. If it's a 10% thing, like, 10% off if you pre-order, we're also going to do a 10% launch day sale, just so you know, everyone going in with open
Or
eyes.
maybe a 9% launch day sale. So you're going to save that penny,
That's right.
you know.
Well, but alternatively, because like you're saying, the getting into a thing early and being part of the dev process and that kind of stuff is the thing that people get excited about. That I'm excited about for other games that aren't the ones we make, you know. So as a consumer of games, you get excited when something is coming out that you like and you want to get involved. That in itself is already a reward.
Right.
And in fact, a lot of games, especially a couple of years ago, back when early access was actually important and did good things, you know, a lot of games there was a handful of games that would sell more during early access than at launch.
Right.
And they
Actually,
told
that
people
was really common.
it was really common.
Yeah.
And they explicitly told people, hey, this is the price now. We're actually going to have a lower price at launch. This higher price is basically meant to sort of like actually gatekeep a little bit, like because we don't want
get the people who care.
get the people who really care to be excited about it. And so they actually use it as a mechanism to kind of keep their population of players a little bit lower even. Right. And so it can be okay if you do a launch day sale, but your beta testers got the game for full price or whatever, right? If everybody knows that that's either that's going to happen or that's a possibility,
right?
So that now they're opting into that system, so that now it doesn't feel unfair, like they didn't know what was going to happen. And because the fact is that, you know, we didn't need to still launch at full price when we launched Crashlands, because our beta testers or all the people who pre-ordered the game, we let them get into the beta if they wanted to.
That's true. Right.
So we actually gave them all early access, and these are all the people who are the most pumped about the game.
I think we also sent them extra keys.
We did for our beta testers.
Yeah.
Who
not for pre-orders, maybe.
Correct.
Yeah.
But many of those are actually the same. So I think,
It's basically the same. There's basically the same 100 people.
Right. And so what those people who were really actually opting into was being a part of.
It's being a part of the big.
It's being a part of that thing.
Right. And I think that is what the value of it is. So when people are always very anti pre-orders, I think I agree with it in some of these cases when it comes to the fact that oftentimes it's this weird business practice that's happening. But I think if they're handled really, really effectively, then you do actually get that really wonderful feeling of being a part of this thing before it happens, and also kind of being on the ground floor. This idea of being a founder, for example, like those founder packs, there's a ton of games now on Steam that have a founder pack, even when they launch fully, but they have like you can basically just pay more for it.
Yeah.
Even.
Right.
I think, is it Heat Signature or something like that? One of the new ones that came out actually just has a version that just costs like $10 more. It's like a supporter pack, I think. I was looking at this yesterday. Yeah. You just pay more.
You can just pay more. Same game.
Which is cool. I'm like, if you're into it, go for it.
I mean, itch.io has their pay what you want slider. You can set a floor and you can say like the game costs $5, but people can pay whatever they want for it, you know, which is a thing that some people really go after.
Yeah. So I think if they're oriented around getting people to feel involved in a community that's around the game and in a movement that's around the game, then I think pre-orders are actually awesome.
Yeah, but I think that is where pre-order content fucks everything up.
Yes.
Because it changes the relationship.
Yeah. Well, it becomes transactional instead of social.
Yeah, well, because now the person isn't becoming involved in the launch of the game. They're buying content for the game, which is just a different kind of thing. And so now that relationship is different. And I think only for the worse.
Right. All right. So the next question comes from Peebnuts123.
Amazing.
You guys have grown. So I think I think I'm probably 5 more pounds.
I've actually shrunk.
Adam shrunk. Sam grew a little bit.
Yeah.
So probably I think on average we're
really.
maybe 1 or 2 pounds up.
Yeah.
You guys have grown, so I think it's probably a good time to ask about team sizes. What team sizes do you think are optimal? What are the biggest challenges in scaling? How many people is too many? So I think 2 is probably too many. The optimal team size is 1 because you will never get a more efficient allocation of time.
Yep. No communication to worry about.
No meetings, no planning. Your resource costs are very low.
The entire organization is just self-aware of every moving part.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's
Which is
nothing,
really incredible.
if you're a team size of 1, nothing happens on the team that the entire team is unaware of. You know,
You didn't have to tell anybody about it.
Didn't have to, no meetings, no emails, no syncing up. Your synergy is
Now,
through the roof.
A team of 2 is almost as good because there's actually just one line of communication.
Yeah.
And if you're,
I think a team of 2 is actually infinitely worse.
I mean, it's infinitely worse, but somehow
but the difference
also,
between 2 and 3 is really big, though.
Yeah.
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 Because
So-
the team of 1 is the perfect team.
Yeah.
and a team of 2, there's one line of communication you got to manage.
Yep.
And if
Which-
you're working,
which is a lot, though.
It's a lot, but if you're working in the same space, you can kind of you're kind of picking up on
You
it.
kind of know.
Yeah.
So it's not quite into the management territory. And then you get into the 3.
But two, it is the case of that as soon as you have 2 people, now systems have to be in place.
Yep.
You need systems.
I need to know what you're doing.
Right. When you have 3 people, it's still the same systems. Now they just have to be more efficient. And then that just kind of goes.
Because when you go from 2 to 3, you actually go from 1 line of communication to 3 lines of communication.
Or 2 per person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I need to know what Seth's doing. Seth needs to know what Adam's doing. And I need to know what Adam's doing, blah, blah. So at
Each
that point-
person needs to know what 2 other people is up to.
Correct. And then as you go up from there, the number of communication lines explodes.
Yeah.
So even at
combinatorial explosion.
even at our small size, we start handling like a dozen, just some stupid number for how many people we have.
I think when you have 10 people on your team, there's 4 billion lines of communication.
Approximately,
Yeah.
something like that.
at least.
Yeah.
So I think if it really depends on what you're trying to do. I think if you're learning and you're early on in your dev stuff, I think having just you is super kick ass because you really in depth learn each aspect of the thing, or at least, some
And
degree of it.
nothing slows you down
Nothing but you.
except for
which
your own,
usually is-
except for your own personal problems,
Which usually there are a lot of.
there are many.
So you got to work on those. And then once you work those out, then you get another person, because the beauty of having more people is that if all your systems are functioning well and your people are functioning well, then you can do a lot of things simultaneously, which you just can't do. We've talked about multitasking. It's dumb. Doesn't work. So once you have, a couple people at your disposal, then Adam can be building web tech. Seth programs the game, and I go talk to people about it. And
Now 3 things are happening
At the same
at
time.
the same time.
crazy. And
But
there's
now we have to have
But then we have to have a
meetings about all that
meeting.
stuff.
Yeah, we have to have a
What
meeting.
happened?
To be like, how was that talking to people? And you're like, good. And I was programming the game. I'm like, pretty good.
Yep.
And then now we've synced up.
Yep.
So
So your sinking costs have to be kept as low as possible.
Because basically your administrative overhead scales up with the sort of the explosive scale of those communication lines. So you gotta figure out how to lock that down so you're not just trapped in meeting hell all the time.
which is why anytime I talk to somebody who's like, oh, we're starting up a studio, I have me and 8 friends or something. I'm like, no,
Fire everybody.
fire
you're
everyone. Keep it as small as possible at the outset.
Have a really good reason for each person that gets added. Like as in,
Nobody else can do it.
as in nobody else
thing.
can do it. Or if that person isn't there, then there's no way you can actually get the work done you need to get done.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where we were when we taking our studio wrangler as an example. So Seth used to have to handle all of our legal and accounting stuff.
Yeah.
So that meant every week you'd easily spend what?
Which wasn't
hours?
a big deal before Crashlands.
Because we didn't.
We had
didn't
very
have any
minimal
money and no legal.
We had
stuff
no
to
money
protect.
and nobody was trying to do business with us.
Yeah.
So
this is referred to as breaking the hound barrier, where suddenly you've been successful enough that you have to invest in the things that help you keep that success.
because you're being hounded.
No, as in like
Is this like
getting
a guard thing
dog.
again? Oh.
Yeah. It's like getting a guard dog for the house,
The hound barrier.
The hound, breaking the hound barrier.
Oh, because you have enough stuff that you need
that
a
you have to
guardian.
invest in securing it,
Right.
Yeah.
which is what that is. Once Crashlands hit, then we're like, oh shit.
Yeah, because
Seth has to
it's
spend
true.
20 hours a
things-
week doing all this
Yeah,
stuff.
back before Crashlands, like money just came in and we just paid ourselves, and that was the end of the story.
Well,
There's
literally
no-
nothing happened.
Almost no money came in, but
But like almost all that little money that
$12
did
came
come in
Yeah.
just went right back out to us as the employees of the company, right?
Yeah.
And we had very little like our overhead in terms of software, in terms of legal stuff, and like everything was very low because we couldn't
we couldn't afford any of it.
Anything that
So
would
we
cost
just
us
didn't
anything.
have it.
Well, also the cost of adding any one additional service, because there's only 3 of us, was also super low.
Yeah.
So if we were like, oh, maybe I'll try this Dropbox plan thing, it's
Yep.
like, okay, just do it because it's $50. Who cares?
Yep.
But now if you're like, okay, we're gonna try
Now it
Udemy,
costs us $1,500 a year
Yep.
for Dropbox.
Yeah.
so it's like that's kind of a decision now that has to be made as opposed to just
Now you
being
got to
like,
have
whatever.
a meeting about it.
Yep.
Damn it.
Sucks. So
Yeah. So then once as things grow, then things have to keep growing to sort of maintain it. And so the goal, you got to keep all that in check really, really hard.
and I will say, if you don't have any interest in running a studio, do not grow beyond like 3 people.
Yeah.
Or maybe even
and also
2.
don't have
Maybe
any
2.
success.
Also don't have any success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is true.
Because
Because whether we added people or not, we would be buried by business negotiations and everything else.
Yeah. Before we got our full team on, the truth is like we were just handling being alive.
We
That
were
was about the
drowning.
extent of it. Yeah.
Yep.
It sucked.
Yeah.
So in that case, the optimal team size is however many you need
yeah,
to get everything
And
done.
though.
ideally one less than that.
Yeah, I
You
think
know.
I think everybody needs to still be scrappy and kind of fighting for it.
People can do a little more than they think they can.
Yeah.
I think. So,
Yeah, because if you're ever unsure if like someone is like really going at something because like there's so many people that you can't really tell, you know, like
what do you do here?
yeah, exactly right. Then you got too many people at that point.
Yeah. And actually, so we had a friend staying from Germany
Mhm.
for the past few days, old college friend, and over to GB.
Mhm.
And she was fascinated about just how our studio works and everything. And she's an MBA, and she was asking all kinds of questions about just like how business is run here in the United States and everything. And she was most interested in the concept of at-will employment.
Mhm.
Because in Germany, if somebody is to leave a company, there's a 3 months notice requirement, regardless of the circumstance.
Yeah. So if a manager is firing someone or if that person's quitting, you have to give 3 months notice.
And you're still there for 3 months, just knowing. So apparently it's very hard to exit a company, no matter what the circumstances are. If the company's out of money, somehow they're still legally required to keep that person around, or every person around, for 3 months and give them adequate notice. I don't understand the logistics of this.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a very conservative approach.
So
it still might only apply to large companies. I have no idea.
it might, but I guess that is but
Because
if not, then that is the case. Then you have to be even more aware of like, if you say, oh, we're going to have, 10 people on our team, and you start up a studio, and all of a sudden you discover that you can't handle that. And you're also now legally obligated to keep everybody around.
Yeah.
Well, because
So that's
especially when you're really small, everybody on the team is super essential to the functioning of that team.
Yep.
And so if you also can't replace somebody because of the legal setup of wherever you're doing things, because the costs are too high, then that makes now the cost of hiring
Really scary.
and the risks of hiring really, really out of control. And that was something that we worry about a lot with too, even though we don't have nearly as big of a problem as that as an at-will system.
Yeah,
We
we're in the
still-
U.S. where the government is like, oh, you're a business? Okay, laws don't apply.
Yeah.
No problem.
Well, but when you get big enough, they start applying again. But it makes sense, because the fact is the small companies like ours wouldn't be able to survive those laws.
Oh, yeah.
You'd be very agile
Yeah.
to stay alive. Yeah.
All companies all the companies that existed once that law went into place, if it existed, would be the only companies that ever got to exist from
Yeah.
now on.
I mean, it does say something about, why it is that Silicon Valley, that the sort of like heart of the startup scene of the world is in the U.S.
Yeah.
because of the extremely loose requirements for a small company to get started and get off the ground, which there basically are none.
Mhm.
You need to be a legal entity, which would cost you like $100.
Then you're good to go.
And now you're good to go.
Yep.
So, anyways, moral of the story when it comes to team sizes,
Small as possible.
keep it,
And then -1.
Yeah, small as possible, -1.
unless you're solo, in which case, keep the one. Keep the one.
Well,
there's
you-
a sort of a max.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
There's a min.
there's a min function here. No, a max function. You want to keep it. There's a floor. All right. All right. So that's all the time we have for this week. So we'd like to thank our studio wrangler, Monique, and our producer, Fat Barb, for putting this episode together, and the Butterscotch dev team for having our backs while we record this podcast. Special thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord and forums running. And if you'd like to get more involved in the Butterscotch community, you can head over to our Discord server, which is at discord.gg/bscotch. Come say hey. Also, if you'd like to adorn your body with Butterscotch merch, you can check out our shop, which is at shop.bscotch.net. And as I mentioned earlier, we are having a Cyberman Week sale. So get those bundles at, I think they're 10% off.
I think so, yeah.
Which, considering they are, I think, $35,000 per bundle normally.
Huge savings.
So the savings are just, astronomical.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if you'd like to adorn us with your swag, we have a mailbox. So you can send us something over at mailbox.bscotch.net. We'll appreciate it. We open everything, and we also get alerts so that we know when something arrives. That doesn't mean that we will be able to get it immediately, so don't send us puppies.
No living beings.
No living creatures of any kind. We cannot guarantee how long they will be there.
No food that spoils. In
no spoiling food, no meat.
Time frame.
Just think about it.
Yeah. Although jerky would probably work.
Jerky?
I don't think jerky ever spoils.
Yeah, it never spoils.
Yeah. Because it's just salt and
it's just delicious.
Yeah. All right, so that's all the time we have. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.